Have you ever heard of Akor Adams? Sounds a bit like a Wish.com hip-hop artist, doesn't it? But don't worry if you haven't, neither have I. If you have, great, let us know your thoughts on the player. But earlier this week, Express employee did his podcast and stated that that's someone that's West Ham's heavily interested in and we are scouting. He currently applies his trade over in France for Montpellier. But don't worry, just because I've never heard of him doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and do nothing. I've contacted someone that does know a little bit about him to get his view. That's coming up in the video. Now, there's a few things guaranteed in life, isn't there? Taxes, death, West Ham pleading poverty ahead of a transfer window. Every single transfer window, we do the whole thing. We've got no money. We're skint. But I'm not buying it. And I don't think too many people are. But regardless, even within those reports saying that we're going to have to sell before we buy, the reports are saying the reason we're going to sell is so that we can raise funds to go and get a new striker in the January transfer window. So that's going to be welcome news to a lot of West Ham fans, and I think there's a big hope, possibly even an expectation, that we will sign a striker in the January transfer window. So it's not a case of will we, it's a case of who. Who are we going to get? Who's the man we're going to bring in to replace, I always say Michael Antonio, it's not anymore, is it? It's to replace David Moyes and push him back out onto the right hand side. Now, there's been 4 names in the last week. 3 of them I am very familiar with. A couple of them you definitely will be. Dominic Solanke of Bournemouth. Armando Broja of Chelsea. Yes, he's been linked to us again. Akor Adams, as we've already discussed. And then Serhou Guirassy of Stuttgart, who we've covered already on this channel. A few weeks ago, I did a video, but there's an important update regarding him. Let's start with Solanke. I'm going to rule this one out straight away. I just think the amount of money it would cost to get him out of Bournemouth makes it bad value. With Steidten coming in, and it's coincided with Solanke's value being at an all-time high, probably. I think he's having a really good season. Far better form this season than he was in last season. So it's a move I could have seen us do a year ago, before Steidten, and also when Solanke's form was patchy. But now he's finding feet, a bit more consistency to his game. Main man at Bournemouth. It's going to cost a lot to get him out. And I just don't see it as a move that we would make anymore. Moving on to Broja of Chelsea. Back from his lengthy layoff, we were obviously interested in him before he got injured. That ruled that one out. We then went and got Gianluca Scamacca. He's back from his injury now. I've seen him glimpses away to Fulham. He played away to Fulham, scored, but I mean, it's difficult to credit him with the goal. The ball hit him and went into the back of the net, but he scored. His name was there, but that's what you need sometimes to get your confidence up and running. But still finding his playing time really limited. Chelsea have far too many players in that striking department. They've got Nkunku coming back from injury post-international break as well. So I could certainly see Broja going out. But I do wonder if there's an opportunity there to get him on loan. Chelsea are under pressure with other players who aren't getting enough minutes and their agents speaking out about lack of minutes for those players who are probably ahead of Broja in the pecking order. So in terms of being obtainable, I think he's up there. I would be surprised if he doesn't move away from Stamford Bridge in the January transfer window. Whether it's a permanent transfer or a loan remains to be seen, but there's certainly something there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see us go in and get him. Now, obviously, we've got the whole question mark over David Moyes' future. Is he going to be here beyond this season? This is something we're going to have to take into consideration to some extent when going after a striker, and I think a loan move for Broja probably ticks all the boxes in the sense that David Moyes gets a player that he really likes, can work with, and then in the summer either will obtain him for the new manager, or obtain him for David Moyes if he gets a new contract, or he goes back to Chelsea and we forget it ever happened, and the new manager comes in and gets his own striker. So Broja would make sense. Chelsea might want to raise funds, but I think a loan move would be more realistic at this point. In terms of Guirassy, somebody I would love at West Ham. I think since I did that video a month ago, he's continued scoring for Stuttgart. Harry Kane broke a record, and then the same weekend Guirassy went and broke it. Brilliant. I think he's having a tremendous season. Obviously, he's got the African nations coming up, which would be a bit of a concern, but I think it's a small one. I do think, by the way, I think when you're losing a player from your current squad, I think it's an issue. So when we lose Kudus and Akor, that's a big issue. I'm not including Benrahma or Cornet. I'm not including them. They're not in the starting 11. Losing them, yeah, it'd be nice to have them, but it's not the end of the world. Kudus and Akor will be big losses. I think that can be drastic. I think when you're buying a player, I don't see it as a big deal because he's not part of your squad. It's not like if we were to sign Guirassy and he misses a couple of games because of African nations, so what? We never had him anyway. At least then, mid-February, he's there, he's ready to use. We've got our new signing then. Someone will get him in January, I'm quite confident, because he has a minimum fee release clause of €17.5 million. We The media thought it was a summer clause. Fabrizio Romano, since I did the video, so a couple of weeks ago now, Fabrizio Romano did an update saying actually it's active in January as well. So that's alerted a lot of clubs. So I think he'll be on the move. I hope it's to West Ham. Obviously, we've got Mavropanos from Stuttgart. Steidten will be aware of it. In fact, you know what? Scrap Steidten will be aware of him. Everyone's aware of him. It's hard not to. He's top goal scorer. Kane might have him. He's one of the top goal scorers in the Bundesliga. It's difficult to not know who he is. So everyone's aware of him. Everyone's aware of the contract situation. So in terms of being obtainable, 100%. It's just, is that the one we want? I hope it is. He's the one I would love to get in. I think he'd work under David Moyes, and I think he's got talent to work under whoever we bring in, should we change manager in the summer as well. That leaves one man, Akor Adams. Never heard of him, so I spoke to someone who has. Here he is, Steve from Babbling Irons. You can find their YouTube channel in the description below, and you can find him on Twitter. He goes by Sloth on Twitter still, but the link to his Twitter profile, or his X profile as it is these days, is in the description. Right, Steve, Adams, what can you tell me about him?
So, easy stats out the way. 6'3" Nigerian. He is very quick, very hardworking, and he is a good, strong finisher. It's those are kind of like the key headlines out the way. One of the things that I think will really work for Moyes is just how strong he is with his pressing and his work rate, as I mentioned. It's not just basic pressing either. One of the things that he likes to do is not just really hassle his opponent, but he likes to close down their passing angles as well. So for those who might think that sounds a bit sort of football nerdy, it's really key when they're trying to break down a press, or if we're looking to counter attack. If we're looking to make sure that we can build a counter, having someone move towards the left back and then alleviate the option of them bringing a ball inside if they pick it up is massive for us. So his football intelligence is actually something that's quite underrated, his vision as well. But counteracting that, he does have a couple of weaknesses to his game that we'll go into, I'm sure.
How old is he?
So he's only 23. He does turn 24 in January. But one of the fears that I have seen kind of bandied about is because he's Nigerian. We've got AFCON in the new year. And let's face it, at the moment, Nigeria have such a blessing of talent. I don't really think he's going to get called up. So it would be really surprise me if he got called up over the likes of, say, Osimhen and Boniface, who is smashing it in the Bundesliga. I think it would be a real surprise.
So it's his strengths then. This is the problem, though. Is you very quickly referenced David Moyes. You said he'd work under David Moyes, and obviously David Moyes' future is uncertain. But as I say, it's uncertain at present. Would you still be keen on this signing post David Moyes?
Definitely. I think because he's as young as he is, and he is as hardworking as he is, but also keen to apply himself and learn different coaching styles. Like the system at Montpellier is very reliant on sort of counter-attacking, but also breaking quickly. And I think that with his understanding of the tactics, you can pretty much apply that to anyone. I mentioned the weaknesses earlier. One of them is that he does tend to get really drawn into the physical side of things, which isn't to say that his discipline's bad. It just means that if there's a crossing opportunity or a ball into the box, he's more likely to be bothered about, having a tussle and out-muscling the centre-back than dropping off a yard. And I think that's something that will come, in the next few years as he starts to mature a bit as a forward. But I think long-term, this is a great signing if it happens. And I would be really excited about the possibility of having him up top and then, say, 80 minutes into the game or 75 minutes into the game, bringing another forward on. I think that would be something that West Ham fans would really like, because, as I mentioned, he's really intense with his pressing. His pace and his size means that it is very difficult for sides to cope with him. And if you're doing that for 75 or 80 minutes, and then you bring another forward on who might have a bit of pace about them, it's a real problem for defenders.
Barty's wrestling with defenders. What's his other weaknesses, if he's got any?
I'd say the other main one is probably just that it's it's a tough one because he likes to take his shots, which is it's not a bad thing for a forward, but it does mean that his link-up plays hurt. So he can join an attack really well and he can create for others, but it's more a case of when he gets a sight at goal, he likes to take his shot as opposed to maybe playing it off to someone who's in a bit of a better position. I'd say that's probably those are two of the biggest weaknesses for me.
Is that within the 18-yarder, or are we talking like from distance as well, i.e. Ben Rama did the other night against Olympiacos?
I mean, even I think that in that situation he would have passed because his link-up play is not bad. It's just he's quite shot happy. And I think it's more a case of just him wanting to be a little bit selfish, but I think that's good for a forward. It's just a case of him at the moment. He's got 7 goals in 880 minutes of football, so it's clearly working for him. It's just a case of, I think, refining it and maybe improving his overall link up. And when you've got someone like Kevin Nolan as well, who can coach that, I think that's a real sort of a diamond in the rough that you can bring forward.
Did Montpellier sign him in the summer? I've never heard of this guy, by the way, so I can only see numbers, data. That's all I can see. I refuse to go and watch like YouTube highlights of players as well, because I think it's the most misleading thing in the world. So I can only go by what I've seen. I've never seen him, never heard of him until a week ago when Express Employee linked us to, and I thought, who's this guy? But when I looked him up, he went to Montpellier this summer. So prior to Montpellier, was he scoring goals? I guess what I'm trying to badly in a really roundabout way say, are you worried that this could be like a purple patch, or is he quite consistent?
So he was in Norway for a couple of seasons. I've got the names of the side written down. It's Signal, where he was in 2018. He scored 10 in 28. He did have a few injury problems, but they were only really small problems. Just, the sort of niggling injuries where you pick them up every so often. But then he moved to Lillestrøm, which is probably a more recognisable name in Norway. He scored 27 in 47. So, it's a pretty good record and a consistent one. In terms of it being a purple patch, I think I don't think it's that really. I mean, we're looking at another forward potentially who is in a real hot purple patch in the form of Guirassy, and whether I don't think that's sustainable form, but I think there's a great player there as well. And I would say that it's very much similar in terms of Akor Adams, that if he can't quite keep up 7 goals in 880 minutes, he'll give you good numbers anyway. So it might be a bit of a purple patch, but to be honest, I don't think it's too far off his normal form.
Is there a rumoured price tag for Adams?
There's not. He moved for around €4.5 million in the summer. And the sort of one leg up that we have is that because he didn't play for any of the Norwegian side, for Lillestrøm, sorry, obviously it doesn't break the 3-club rule. So we would be able to sign him. I do think that Montpellier would be open to selling him for around €20 million. You look at what they sold Wahi for, and this is a guy who's just come in. They haven't spent much money on, and I think they'd be quite happy to turn a profit and scout again for other players and invest across the pitch with that money.
Well, last question, Steve. As you've just alluded to there, we're being linked to a couple of other strikers, Guirassy Broja from Chelsea, Solanke's name is back again from Bournemouth, and then Adams being the latest one. Do you have a preference as to who you'd see at West Ham? Or do you have someone else that we've not mentioned that you'd actually rather have instead of Adams?
There's a couple. I think the issue that we have at the moment is AFCON, and I don't want to sound disrespectful to AFCON because I know a lot of English football fans in particular like to pick on it or have a little dig at the timing of the competition. But I think with Akor Adams, as I mentioned, you don't have that risk of him getting selected to Nigeria squad, which I mean no offense to him by, but there's also the likes of Bouladia, who we've been linked with. He will probably go to AFCON. I think he's a fantastic player who really suits the Antonio mould. But I think at the moment, the player you have to really look at is Guirassy, just because of the form he's in. And I think he suits us so well with his pace and power. But if it was me, I would probably go for Akor Adams, just because of the fact that he's not quite got the injury problems that Guirassy has had. But also, I think there's a lot of potential to work under Moyes or whoever comes in. And I think his pace, size, and work rate is something that would thrive at West Ham.
Love that. Steve, thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Massive thank you to Steve for giving up his time. You can find him regularly over on the Babbling Irons YouTube channel, along with the likes of Frankie and Mike as well. Really good channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. Just search for it on YouTube, or the link is in the description below. So there you go. 4 names that West Ham are being linked to solve the striker, as we say, issue. It's becoming an issue, isn't it? Guirassy is my pick. Let me know in the comments below who your selection would be. It doesn't have to be one of the 4 mentioned. You've got another name that you'd like to see us bring in the January transfer window. Do get involved in the comment section. But if you've enjoyed this video, hopefully you've discovered a little bit more about the Wish.com hip hop artist. Please do drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up. Subscribe to the Damage Chat. I'll catch you in a bit.